Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd, and this is day 179 since the Hamas attacks on the southern part of Israel. That means that there are hostages that have been held in Gaza for 179 days. That means that the people of Gaza, many of them have had limited access to water and food and electricity for 179 days. A fresh warning of famine in Gaza has come in the joint World Bank and United Nations report that was released today. Beyond structural damage that's been found in Gaza as a result of bombardment, the report echoes multiple reports in recent weeks that have signaled that famine is imminent in the besieged Palestinian territory. More than half of the population is on the brink of famine, with the whole population experiencing acute food insecurity and malnutrition. This is according to an AFP wire. An estimated 84% of Gaza's health facilities have been damaged or destroyed, while 3/4 of the population have been displaced by the fighting, leaving more than 1 million people without homes. The report, created using remote data collection, found that Gaza's water and sanitation has nearly collapsed. Their systems have nearly collapsed, and it was delivering less than 5% of its pre-war output. All 100% of Gaza's children are out of official school due to the collapse of the education system, while 92% of its primary roads have been destroyed or damaged, according to the World Bank. The new report calls for an increase in humanitarian assistance, food aid, and food production, the provision of shelter, and rapid, cost-effective, scalable housing solutions for displaced people, and the resumption of essential services. The situation in Gaza is dire. For the 2.3 million people who live there, for the more than 100 hostages, it could be as many as 130 or more, who hopefully are still alive. Their families hoping that they might be returned to them safely, being still held by Hamas. In the United States, I missed this news last week and wanted to be sure to share it. Last week, former President Donald Trump said Israel has to finish up the war in Gaza because they have to be very careful because they are losing a lot of support. Now, finish up could mean, bring a quick end. Finish up could mean, carry out and finish their business. But it's been reported that Trump has said the war should be brought to an end, which some would say is more than what we're hearing from the Biden administration. Japan has said they will resume funding for UNRWA, according to their foreign minister, Yamakawa, who spoke to local media. Today, the death toll in Gaza is 32,916 Palestinians, 75,392 wounded since the beginning, since October 7th. Escalations with Lebanon and Syria have continued. I shared that there was an attack by Israel on the Iranian embassy or consulate in Syria and Damascus. It was reported that the commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards Quds Force of Lebanon and Syria was killed. His name is Mohammad Reza Zahedi. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, said that Israel will regret the attack, end quote. That was reported today. UN spokesperson Dujarric has said that the organization's Secretary General Guterres condemns the attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, calling for utmost restraint. The attack killed 11 people, including the senior commander I just mentioned. The attack was attributed to Israel. Turkey said the attack was a violation of international law, and Iran's leaders described the targeting of the diplomatic mission late on Monday as unprecedented, and they did promise a harsh response. Israel's defense minister Gallant said Israel would act everywhere, every day to prevent the force buildup of our enemies. We are on a multi-front war in offense and defense. We see evidence of this every day, including in recent days. He said Israel was acting to make it clear to everyone who acts against us all over the Middle East that the price of acting against Israel will be a heavy price. Israel's delegation will return from Cairo, having formulated a new proposal for a ceasefire and hostage release deal with Hamas, according to reports. No news on if that's accepted or not. The World Health Organization said the destruction of Al-Shifa Hospital has amounted to ripping out the heart of the health system in that territory. The Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez told journalists on a visit to Amman that Spain will recognize a Palestinian state before July. Sanchez said he believed there would soon be a critical mass within the EU to push several other member states to adopt the same position. You may recall that the US has also been pushing for the possibility of the recognition of a Palestinian state and a two-state solution. I just was speaking with a significant rabbi here in the United States who said that in Israel, the appetite for a two-state solution since October, has been at an all-time low. U.S. Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will be traveling to Saudi Arabia this week for talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman amid a U.S. push for progress towards normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That was on the table months ago. It sounds like those conversations are continuing. And former Israeli President Rivlin warned that Israel is one step away from international ostracism. We're losing the tremendous moral values that all Israeli governments for generations have enjoyed. I wanted to share the most significant news that has been all over the international media is that the World Central Kitchen has suspended their aid operations in Gaza because 7 of their workers were killed in an Israeli strike. The food nonprofit said in a statement that there are a number of their workers who've been killed, including a U.S.-Canadian dual national. The IDF has said that they're investigating. They will conduct a thorough review. UNRWA, which is also an NGO that's US-based that works in Gaza, is also going to halt its operations. According to The Guardian, we know 7 aid workers have been killed outside of Deir al-Balah on Monday night. The Israeli government confirmed that its military carried out this what they're calling an unintended strike. The World Central Kitchen is an international charity that has brought hundreds of tons of food aid into Gaza. 3 Britons, a Palestinian, a US-Canadian dual citizen, a Pole, and an Australian were killed. They were traveling in 2 armored cars that had its charity's logo on the top. They also had a third vehicle that was a soft-skinned vehicle. They coordinated their movements with the Israeli Defense Forces, and the convoy was hit as it was leaving Deir al-Balah. It was leaving a warehouse where the team had unloaded 100 tons of humanitarian food that had brought into Gaza on a maritime route, according to the charity. And the Israeli Defense Forces told Haaretz that the aid workers' vehicle had been hit 3 times by missiles fired from a drone because of erroneous suspicions that a terrorist was traveling with the convoy. Haaretz reported that some of the passengers left their vehicle after it was hit by the first missile, climbed into another car, which was then hit by a second missile. The third car in the convoy approached to pick up the occupants of the second car, and then it was hit by a third missile. And the strike killed all of the workers that were in the convoy. The WCK has paused its operation while it decides on future activities. The Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, admitted that the Israeli forces killed the humanitarian workers and said that this happens in wartime. He described it as a tragic case of forces unintentionally hitting innocent people in the Gaza Strip. Israel said it has plans to open a joint situation room with international groups to enable coordination of humanitarian aid, but WCK on Monday said about the attack that despite coordinating movements with the IDF, the convoy was hit as it was leaving Deir al-Balah warehouse. The United States government, they have just, to me, they can't kind of let their yes be yes and their no be no. Despite the fact that U.S. Secretary of State Blinken did not formally condemn the strike by the military that killed 7 aid workers from World Central Kitchen, the White House followed up on the briefing, claimed that their expression of outrage equals condemnation. So the national security spokesperson, John Kirby, was asked why the U.S. did not condemn the strike. Blinken was at a press conference in Paris, and his French counterpart condemned the strike. And Kirby said that expressing outrage is just an equivalent of expressing condemnation. He was speaking from a West Wing podium in Washington, and he said that outrage can be read as condemnation by the White House. Kirby said that there was no evidence as of yet that the IDF had killed the aid workers deliberately. He also said it continued to be the position of the U.S. that the Israeli military offensive against Hamas in Gaza in the last 5 months, Israel has not violated international humanitarian law. I just would remind you, Israel turned off water, food, and gas and electricity from the population of Gaza. And so for him to say that Israel has not violated international law, I just want to know what international law Kirby is reading. He also said that the U.S. Has not been involved in any way in the Israeli airstrike on Iran's embassy compound in Damascus in Syria. And also, Joe Biden is conveying his condolences to World Health Kitchen workers killed in Gaza by the Israeli military on Monday night. The White House is outraged over the killings of the workers by the Israeli Defense Forces. I'd remind you, we published a letter last week, and I used the language, I wrote this about how world leaders have used empty rhetoric and political volleying. And I use that specifically talking about the United States and other world leaders, empty rhetoric and political volleying without, any actions behind them. And some bishops did not want to sign a letter because they thought that empty rhetoric was offensive. And when I hear things like, the president of the United States offering condolences because international aid workers who gave their lives to feed a population that's in the midst of a famine, and at the same time as sending billions of dollars of military aid to arm the very military whose weapons were used to kill the aid workers, I find it offensive that our White House would say, on one hand, you know that we meant condemnation, when really we only expressed strong outrage. To me, that is empty rhetoric. So if that's not empty rhetoric, I don't know what is. But we'd invite you, that letter is now open to individual signatures, and we would invite you to join us.